Okay, so it's just about time, so I think we will get going. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Shahrzad Bashir. I'm the director of the program in Middle East Studies here at Brown, at the Watson. And so today's talk is part of a year-long series that we are doing called Iran Today. The idea being to discuss topics relating to Iran and in the study of Iran that are not usually covered in the media reports that we often get, to try to get to the living society and the complex country that Iran is. So we already had one talk earlier this semester, and now today we have the second one. And then there are going to be two more coming up in the spring semester. So it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Ahoo Najafian, Dr. Ahoo Najafian. She is right now the Ira T. Wender postdoctoral scholar in Middle East Studies and Religion at Carleton College. Her training goes back to Iran. She did a BA in English Language and Literature at Tehran University, followed by an MA in English Literature at Tehran University, then an MA in Women's and Gender Studies at the University of British Columbia, and then a PhD at Stanford in 2018, earlier this year. The title of her PhD dissertation was Poetic Nation, Iranian Soul and Historical Continuity, and I'm happy to say that the dissertation was recently recognized as for honorable mention in the international competition for the best dissertation in Iranian studies. And every time I talk to Ahoo, I learn something absolutely new about Iranian society and what is happening in Iran. So this gives me extra pleasure to introduce her to talk to us today about the contemporary theater scene in Iran. So please.
Hello, and thank you so much for coming. Thanks to Shahrzad for this nice introduction. My master from pre-eternity to post-eternity, so I'm sorry. Even when all is done, you're still stuck with me. Sorry. And I should also thank Barbara and Soraya for making all these happen, and I'm sure they can give a presentation on the difficulties of inviting an Iranian citizen for a talk somewhere. So please, you should invite them on America Today and what it's like. When Shahrzad told me about this series, and I got very, very excited, and I kept thinking what I can talk about, because, again, we've heard the cliche that we just hear part of the things about Iran. It's not everything. What should we do? And unfortunately, it's been 40 years that we've been saying the same thing over and over and over again. So what is happening? So I'm hoping that series like these would somewhat change the things. And when I was thinking about the topic, I thought maybe I should start with something that surprised me when I went back to Iran 2 years ago. So I left Iran in 2009. And I've tried to go back every 2 years, at least. And every time that I go back, things have changed so much and so rapidly that people realize that I'm not living in Iran because I'm acting so confused. But then, having their own understandings, they don't believe that I live in the US, they think I've come from a village. But interestingly enough, the same thing happens to me in villages as well. Where were you? How you don't know these things? So that's how fast things are changing. So the last time I was in Iran was 2 years ago. I hadn't gone back for 2 years. And what I saw was this booming theater scene, not just in the place, but the number of spaces that were for staging plays. So when I wanted to meet friends, they would say, come, blah, 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 to this place. And I said, what is this place? And say, oh, it's a new theater space. Really? And I'd go there, and yes, and they were so innovative and interesting. So some of them only had 10 seats. Some of them were just for standing. Some of them you should just look from afar. So something was happening, and I was so surprised, and I thought, okay, I should talk about this. If this can surprise me, I'm sure it can be new for other people as well. So Today I'm going to talk about one specific playwright whom I met in Iran and have been talking to him for the past year and a half. So there is no denying it. Theater is booming in Iran today, not just in the capital, Tehran, which is at this moment hosting around 140 plays. And I wrote the abstract for this talk 2 months ago, and it has changed from 2 months ago to now. Back then it was 90 plays, now it is 140 plays, and perhaps later on it will be more or less, we don't know. But the scene is changing every day. But also in big and small cities around the country, several annual festivals see original and adapted plays by student groups and also small regional groups. In this talk, I will give a brief overview of the scene today, which is changing rapidly every day, from the large-scale production, which is pejoratively called luxury, meaning luxury. There are these huge, large-scale productions, to small student productions. In the second part, I will focus on 3 plays by the playwright Kamran Shahlaei. The reason for choosing Shahlaei's work as the topic of my talk is that he represents a new wave of playwrights and directors who are seeking to stage what they themselves refer to as alternative plays. The other reason, which is more self-serving, is the theme of retelling the past in his work. So as Shahrzad knows, I'm obsessed with retellings of the past and how we think about the past. The plays I'm going to discuss today are 7 Days in June 1981, performed in June 2017, a documentary theater that deals with the terrorist attacks at the headquarters of the Iran Islamic Republic Party by the People's Mujahideen Organization. You Went On With Your Dying, performed in June 2018, about a family that an event in their past ruptures the flow of their life. And Advantage, we just finished performing 2 days ago, about the bombardment of the city and Dimashq by Iraqi forces on November 23rd, 1986. So, and all 3 foreground the act of remembering and the force that the past has today, at least in the work of this playwright. So, the scene has changed. And the first sign was the mushrooming of theater stages, some for experimental plays with a capacity of around 10, to luxurious venues built specifically for large-scale productions that hold 2,500 seats. The first play to exceed all expectations was Mississippi Dies Seated, Mississippi Neshasте Mimired, written and directed by Humayun Ghanizadeh, and it is very, very loosely based on the Swiss playwright Friedrich Dürrenmatt's The Marriage of Mr. Mississippi. It was successful both critically, it won almost all the awards that year, but also it grossed around 2 billion tomans. And those who are familiar with the Iranian situation, the price of dollar changes, the value changes every day. So I cannot give you an exact number, but believe me, it's a lot, especially for plays in Iran that there had been sporadic successes. For example, Ishq was one of the most popular plays in 1990s, and it sold, I don't know, 20 million tomans, but it was different back then. But from 2015, it has become a trend. The theater sells, and it is something new. The next year, and you can see the scene design and everything is very, very professional. The next year, Shahab Hosseini's The Confession, interestingly enough, based upon an American TV series, The Confession, created by Kiefer Sutherland and written by Brad Merman, broke the records by selling around 2.5 billion tomans. Again, believe me, it's a lot. And some attribute the success to the director's superstar status. I wonder if he appears mainly in Asghar Farhadi's movies about Ellie, A Separation, and most recently, A Salesman. But a couple of months later, the phenomenon happened. Mohammad Parsai's musical adaptation of Oliver Twist grossed more than 14 billion tomans. And Parsai himself is a high-ranking official, both during Ahmadinejad's administration and at the current administration. And he is the current chair of Iran Shahr Theater, one of the older generations of theater spaces. He has been criticized by conservatives and the conservative press of undermining the revolutionary values. And again, he himself is one of the officials. For example, Raja News, one of the conservative news media, criticized a series of plays staged on Iran Shahr in 2016. Specifically, Majid Mozaffari is representative of the people for making fun of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Bahara Rahnamaz, the other, for destigmatizing queerness and homosexuality. And Muhammad Ali Sajjadi's The Not So Blind Owl, free adaptation of Sadegh Hedayat's The Blind Owl, for anything Hedayat Raja News doesn't like, so that was the reason, but mainly for its absurd themes. Oliver Twist itself was very controversial for the expensive set design and using movie stars in the lead role. So that is another thing about theater in Iran. So in order, it has changed to an industry, so the producers want their money back. So instead of theater actors, they would go to movie stars, and it helps. It helps. 14 billion tomans shows that it helps. Such productions are said to be the direct result of privatization of theater and a new liberal approach to culture. So we don't have time to delve deeply into this matter, but I should just mention that this is not a new discussion in Iran, and has come to the fore every now and then from before the revolution, that if the government is paying for theaters, they expect certain things, and if we go with privatization, the playwrights and the directors will have some kind of autonomy, so they don't have to repeat the government values, whether it's the monarchy or an Islamic government, so on and so forth. On the other hand, oh, sorry, I misplaced my text. Okay. So the same person, Mr. Parsai, is now producing the play Les Misérables. And it is a musical similar to Oliver Twist, and you can see here ladies dancing, singing, and ladies showing hair, and it's a wig, so it's okay. So what is happening? Does it look like Iran to you, the Iran that you see every day, or not? So what is happening? And again, it was controversial. It wasn't that everybody was okay with it, but the fact that it happened and it was on stage for more than 4 months and very successful should tell us something. Right now, he is staging Les Misérables. Here are some scenes. And he claims that it is absolutely original. I'll let you be the judge of that by this. are the huge movie stars. Yes. So the tickets for this play sell officially for 180,000 2 months, but the play has sold out. And on the black market, it's around 2 million tomans, and it has become an Instagram thing. People take selfies with the tickets. So we'll see. And what is interesting for me is that there are sanctions. Everybody's talking about how people are getting poorer and poorer, but plays like this, and this is not the only one, there are many, many others like this, are selling like that in Iran. So, and these are produced by the officials of the government. On the other hand, there are other types of play. So this was fantastic. It's called Steve Jobs. And if you want the Persian title, it's Steve Jobs. So, so it is a play based on Steve Jobs' life, but it is a harsh attack against consumerism and capitalism. And this chair is the only prop of the set. And again, this is a new thing in Iranian theater, because the same stage hosts 3 plays one after another. So they don't have time to have stages made and moved. So they're going with the very, very minimalist set design. So this is at a salon close to Tehran University. And the same theater shows. I love the title of the play, and hopefully I can watch it soon. It's called A Survey of Capitalism, written by 2 cows. And the actors are basically 2 cows talking about capitalism and Marx. And again, it is against the type of plays that we see in these huge productions. In another theater, it's the Molavi Theater in Tehran University. And this is a student production of John Gabriel Borkman, Ibsen's play. So these are all students, the director, everyone. The translator of the play is a Tehran University professor. They're doing this. Also, I would love to mention this group before I move on to our actual playwright. So they are a group called Bachehai Shahkar, the Marvelous Kids, created by Sami Saleh Sabet, comprised of 11 to 17-year-old actors. Their first play was an adaptation of Beckett's Waiting for Godot from the point of view of homeless Iranian adolescents. The play examined what it means to be young in Tehran today, and the group began their 4th performance after The Enemy of the People and Prometheus. A week ago, it's called Antijun, based on Sophocles' Antigone. Again, a Persianized version, Antijun, that last week. And the mission of the group is to use the pedagogical potentials of drama in shaping the future generation and educating the parents of what is going on in the minds of kids today in Tehran, and using all these classics to do that. Any questions so far? Okay. So, with this very, very, very brief background, I cannot tell you how brief this was. There are so many things happening. It's so difficult. And these were just the modern adaptations. The more traditional ones are happening. New adaptations of the traditional theater is happening. And again, this is just in Tehran. So I now focus on 3 works by the celebrated playwright Kamran Shahlaei. And a disclaimer is in order. I have not been able to see these plays performed on stage. I've seen them. Again, technology, I always say, oh, technology, I'm a very old 80-year-old woman, but it's good because we can see these plays online. So I've seen 2 of them online, and hopefully waiting for the 3rd to come online as well. So I have read the plays many, many times, and I've talked to the playwright many, many times. So that's my disclaimer. Therefore, I will focus mainly on the themes of the plays and a little about the adaptation of one of these plays you went on with your dying by another director, Mrs. Mojgan Shahlaei, who follows the method of Theodor Cantor in dramatizing the play. And just a personal anecdote here, I got to know Mr. Shahlaei's work when my father was approached to do a play pro bono. It was called The Sweet Time of Retirement. And my dad sent me, he's an actor, he sent me the script to ask my opinion. He doesn't listen to me at all. I don't know why he asks my opinion and then does the opposite. In this case, he did listen. So, and I found it very, very interesting because the play is an interesting mixture of reality and imagination. So this gentleman who has recently been retired meets a young lady, falls in love, maybe, keeps fantasizing about her and tries to recreate that fantasized relationship with his own wife. But the wife doesn't care, so get away from me. Why are you here all the time? So, and near the end, we don't know if it is his fantasies happening, it is the reality happening. So I love the play. And one of the reasons was that it was very, very different from what I had in mind, what Iranian theater was. Because mainly most of them, as you saw, are adaptations of European plays, which is in itself very, very interesting because they Iranianized all these European themes. It is not that they're just, there are absolute copies, definitely, but from Shakespeare to Beckett to Brecht, we see Iranianized versions of these things. Some of them are successful, some of them are cringeworthy, but I won't talk about them here. Everybody is good in Iran. This is being recorded, so. So when I read his play, I wanted to learn more about his work, and he kindly shared his works with me, and 3 of which are the subject of the talk today. The reasons for choosing Kamran Shahlaei for this talk are threefold. First, he's a celebrated playwright, having won several national and regional awards from the most prestigious theater festivals. So the Fajr Theater Festival, he won 3 years. And remember, this can be for some cause for celebration, but for others being a pro-government writer. So still, I don't know. But just to tell you how it works in the mind of people, some say, oh, fantastic. Others say, ah, government. So that's one thing. Second, he has acted as a jury member or secretary in many festivals around Iran and has a very good sense of what is going on in different places when it comes to theater. When I talk to him, he's not very optimistic about what's happening in outside of Tehran when it comes to theater and plays, but the fact that it is happening and students mainly are doing it gives us some hope. And what he does is he let all groups adapt his plays for free for stage. So he is one of those people who is encouraging the younger generation to do more. And finally, I have found an element in his works which I find fascinating and necessary for people in our generation. So Mr. Shahlaei was born in 1979 in Kermanshah, a generation who was raised completely after the revolution, during the war. And as someone who is somewhat close to Mr. Shahlaei in that sense, I think it is our job to look back. We have heard our parents, we have heard the government, we have heard the opposition about what happened. So we have all heard the narrative, but we have lived in those times. We have lived during the war, but because we were children, maybe we don't remember, maybe we have forgotten, or maybe we're remembering the memories of our parents and other people. So I find it very, very necessary for people of my generation in Iran to look back. And he looks back not in anger, similar to John Osborne and the other angry young men in Britain, and not in nostalgia, like many, many artists inside and outside of Iran, but in wonder. He wonders what happened, and why have we forgotten what we have forgotten, and why we remember what we remember. And these are not necessarily the events that official history tellers have forgotten. They are there on our calendars, but are reduced just to that, events on a calendar. Some of them are commemorated every year, to be forgotten until the next year. And again, this is one of my own questions about memorialization of events. Do they make them just very normal and mundane, or are they there just for us to not forget? Don't let me start on that one, I won't stop. So in what follows, I look at Shahlaei's dramatization of two such moments in the recent history of Iran. The 1981 terrorist attack in the headquarters of the Islamic Republic Party of Iran that killed some of the most high-ranking officials of the government, including the Chief Justice, Ayatollah Beheshti. And it's very interesting because today it is commemorated as the martyrdom of 72 companions of Imam Khomeini, which is a reference to the 72 companions of Imam Hussein in the events of Karbala, the grandson of the Prophet. And then it turned out there were more than 72 people who were killed in that thing. So it says martyrdom of more than 72 companions of the Imam. So the language itself is somewhat problematic. That's what's happening there. How many people were there? And the other event is the 1986 bombardment of the city of Andimeshk by Iraqi forces. And it happened, it went on for 100 minutes nonstop, and continued sporadically for another 2.5 hours. It happened when I was 3, and I didn't know that it had happened. And it is one of the most horrific things that happened in Iran-Iraq war. It is commemorated every year, but personally, didn't know. If I knew, I had forgotten. So why? Why I had forgotten it? Why should I remember it? That's another question. Why should I remember the past? So the third play, You Went On With Your Dying, is, in my interpretation, a symbolic narrative of such forgettings and rememberings. So let's begin with the most recent. It's called Avantage or Advantage. And the title is a reference to a football, the soccer rule. Sorry. If I say football in this room, it means soccer. Soccer rule, where the referee allows the play to go on, quote, when the team against which an offense has been committed will benefit from such an advantage, end quote. So yeah, I've done my research. It was from the FIFA official website. So advantage, and this is Michel Platini, the soccer player, the French soccer player. And this is Andimeshk's train station. The attack started here. And Andimeshk is a city in southwest of Iran. It was a very important place in the war because exactly of the trains, the soldiers' food and everything. It was the way from the capital to the war zone. So the play begins with two soldiers who have just got off the train in Andimeshk. They watch a group of kids playing soccer, and one of them, who self-identifies as Michel Platini, the French soccer star, piques their interest for his technique. And the play revolves around the character of this 10-year-old boy named Hessam, 30 years later. And it's narrated by different people who used to know him when he was a kid, including his friends, neighbor, and mother. And these narrations are mainly to an interviewer who we do not see, we do not hear, but we know it's an official interviewer because, for example, the mother starts saying, yes, Hessam was a happy child, he danced. Oh, sorry, I cannot say dance. Okay, he did balanced movements, or whatever is the official name of dancing in Iran, but it means dancing. So that's how we know. So each of them give us a piece, and the audience has to piece together that who Hessam was. And it is with this background that the horrible things that happened during the bombardments, they start with Hessam, and then they start talking about themselves, that I was doing this happened, this happened. We then meet the 40-year-old Hessam speaking with the 35-year-old Mona. We learn from Hessam's mother in the next scene that Hessam actually was killed on November 23rd, 1986, a few minutes after the bombardment of the city began. We see other survivors of the attack who tell us what they were doing when the bombardment began. And they were doing normal things. They were eating lunch, they were coming back from school, they were napping. And it is this juxtaposition of these very, very normal things and the horror that happens after that makes it more poignant. So we have to piece together what happened to the city and its residents from 11:45 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. The 40-year-old Hessam and Mona meet again, and we learn from their conversation that Mona has seen Hessam in her dreams since she was 5. In her dream, the 10-year-old Hessam is running, but suddenly, quote, disappeared into 1,000 pieces, end quote. Hessam grows old in her dreams, and she keeps suppressing them until a Sufi peer. This is a very, very interesting appearance of a Sufi peer in this play. And we don't see him. Everything is just, we are told. So it's very Greek in the sense that the action happens outside the scene. A Sufi peer, where is the Sufi peer? Mystically, I lost my, oh yes. A Sufi peer tells her that she should start talking with the boy. And there are so many of these references in most of his plays. Just in passing, you just hear about one character, but they have such huge roles in how you interpret what is happening generally in the play. And they watch soccer clips together from Platini, his hero, to the November 27th of 1997 Iran-Australia match. Do we have Iranians who remember that day? So it was a few months after Dovam Khordad. Yes, that's the scene where Khodadad Azizi. Yeah, sorry, I get very emotional when I talk about that day. It was a few months after the 2nd of Khordad, when the reformist president Khatami came to power in absolute wonder of people. So people voted for him. The people who voted for him didn't think that he'd win, but he did. So there was this sense of hope. And then in this match, which Iran won miraculously, and went to the World Cup in France that Michel Platini was chairing. That was a different scene. Were you in Iran when that happened? Everybody was out on the street. It was the symbol of hope that we did it. We have chosen a reformist president. And now through soccer, we have been accepted in the international community. So it showed a lot. It was the first time after revolution that a soccer team of Iran had gone to the World Cup. So the 40-year-old Hassam is watching this. He can't believe it. And we can somehow sense that if he were alive, he would probably be one of these players. But he died when he was 10 years old. And the survivors continue their stories. And after this happy scene, the next scenes are devastating. I'm not going to tell you the details, perhaps only one, and these are all real based on the interviews by the rescue forces afterwards. So for days, they were finding pieces on the trees. So all the trees in the city were red because of the force of the bombardments. The remains of bodies were everywhere. The city was basically red. So they tell us stories about how and where they found their mother, brother, friend, so on and so forth. And Hassam is one of the people who disappears into 1,000 pieces. They can't find anything of him in the play. When the two soldiers remember their own martyrdom, we realize that they are ghosts as well. And the play ends with Mona meeting the 10-year-old Hassam, wondering how life would be for her and Hassam had he not disappeared on November 23rd, 1986. And in their dream, they start dating, they go to coffee shops, and Hassam doesn't know what to do. So all those magical, realistic things are happening in the play as well. So now I'm going to talk about 7 Days in June 1981. It also deals with real events. And it has been characterized as a documentary play because it uses only materials from news media. So all the dialogues are based on the actual recorded, registered interviews and reports by the government. It focuses on 3 employees at the Office of the Islamic Republic Party: Alireza Nadali, who was a survivor, Jawad Sarafraz, who was killed, and Mohammad Reza Kolahi, who was accused of conducting the attack. And it starts from June 22nd, Awal Tir, first of Tir, the first month of summer in Iran, to June 28th, when a bomb went off in the party headquarters and killed some of the more than 72 companions of the Imam, including Ayatollah Beheshti. People's Mujahideen of Iran took the responsibility of the attacks, and around 2 months later, on August 30th, they carried out another attack in the Prime Minister's office, killing the recently elected President Mohammad Ali Rajai and Prime Minister Mohammad Jawad Bahonar. I won't get a chance to get into the details of what happened, but basically the president who was supported by Mujahideen was impeached in the parliament and removed from power. Mujahideen protected him. He escaped the country before he was impeached with the head of the party, Masoud Rajavi. And the reason was that it was believed that that president, and his name is escaping me, interestingly enough, Bani Sadr, was acting against a member of the Islamic Republic Party, most of whom were very, very influential clerics. So again, this is part of the official and unofficial history. Based on who you ask, they give you different types of histories. The only fictional monologue, okay, sorry, I jumped. So the play moves around this background with documented interviews with different characters. The only fictional monologue belongs to the character of Mohammad Reza Kolahi, This is, for example, the secretary who tells some stories about Ayatollah Beheshti. And this is the character who plays Mohammad Reza Kolahi. The person accused of carrying out the attacks and with an unknown fate. A few months ago, it's interesting that it was reported that an Iranian Dutch citizen by the name of Ali Motamed was killed in 2015, allegedly by the mob, was actually Mohammad Reza Kolahi. The reports were never corroborated by the Iranian officials. In the play, he appears every now and then, the only character that talks directly to the audience and gives sporadic and contradictory information about himself. So all the other characters documented reports, but he comes and he's the only one who sees us as the audience. The play ends by Kolahi talking directly to the audience about his multiple fates, that he committed suicide in 1985 in Hamadan, that he went to Kurdistan and recruited soldiers for Mujahideen because they got into war with Iran. They were backed by Iraqi forces and they themselves turned against Iran. That he left Iran for France right after the attacks, that he was living in Netherlands under the name of Ali Motamed, that he was also killed on June 28th and was not part of the attacks at all. Where am I and what do I do? He asks the audience. I'm a secret, a very, very dark one. And this retelling of dark secrets brings me to the final play. You went on with your dying. The title is borrowed from a poem by American poet Mark Strand. He won the Pulitzer Prize for Ice Blizzard. Does that ring a bell? No? Okay. And it was the title of a book published in Persian containing 80 elegies and love poems by international poets, accompanied by images by very well-known photographers. It was published by this group called Profession Artist, Herfe Honarmand, and it was very, very popular. So the poem itself is in 6 parts and begin with these lines. Mark Strand writing to his dead father, and if you haven't read it, it's okay. Read it when you're not feeling suicidal. It's a very, very depressing poem, elegy for my father. The hands were yours, the arms were yours, but you were not there. And it continues describing father in that way. And in the 3rd part, you're dying, it says, nothing could stop you. Not the best day, not the quiet, not the ocean rocking. You went on with your dying. And again, it describes all the beauties and uglynesses of life and the father who was bent only on dying. You went on with your dying. The play starts with a haunting declaration by 25-year-old Soha. Today, I killed my father. Today, exactly 1 week before he met my mother, I killed him with 7 stabs to the chest. And none of these events happen. But the play continues with the girl's family. A 22-year-old sister, Sahra, who is going to marry her boyfriend, Faraz, and they're a very, very happy couple. But the mother starts seeing Soha, the first daughter. And Sahra, the sister, the 22-year-old sister, keeps denying her existence. Most of the play is a power struggle between these 2 sisters who want to be seen by the mother. Finally, Soha goes to Faraz, her sister's boyfriend, and tells him that she was aborted 25 years ago by her father's insistence. And realizing that now she's being forgotten by the happy tidings in the family, she forces herself on Faraz in his dream and the mother in her reality. An interesting thing is that the father is absent. We only hear his voice once. He's never on the stage. So it gets a bit, I disagree with the way things go. The boyfriend falls in love with the dead sister, so on and so forth. But that's not the point here. She is stealing the live sister, both from this dead sister. So the dead sister comes back to claim love of a boyfriend and love of a mother. And the happy family, so the scenery is fantastic. I'm going to talk about it very, very briefly. So these are the two sisters. Here's the mother in the coffin-like thing. And this is most of the play. The conversations that the two sisters do not hear each other, and the mother hears both of them. The play ends as it had begun. Soha, after celebrating her 25th birthday, says, "Today I killed my father. Today, exactly 1 week before he met my mother, I killed him with 7 stabs to the chest. And none of these events happen." So we can interpret that we are going to have a repetition of the events exactly as they were. And I want to very briefly focus on Mojgan Shahlaei's production of the play that draws on the Polish director Tadeusz Kantor and his theater of death. The notion that all representation on stage is of something, all representations on stage is of something that is no more and has been resurrected from memory. Haunting is a tool that challenges its readers to imagine otherwise. The ghost resists signification and discipline. In theater seeming, the ghost becomes an unpredictable figure of resistance and interpretation and interruption. Something that is and is not there. So while many critics saw this play as a pro-government propaganda against abortion, abortion is bad, don't abort children, or yes, children is the political correct term, isn't it? I read the aborted daughter as the aborted memory, as the aborted past that forces itself on us, seeking respect, independent of the official command of authority figures, and against the hedonistic attitudes that dismiss it. So that is one of the questions that people have, why theater is selling so much and what type of plays are selling. One thing is that those who have movie stars and those who keep attacking the government. So before a censor sees it, they have a chance to, attack, it's the government attacking, before the censor stops the play, they can do and say whatever they like, and that's what people enjoy, to hear the government being criticized very openly, but very superficially. Is this really what is happening? And playwrights like Shahlaei that is why they themselves call their plays as alternative theater, that it is not going at cheap shots at the government. It tells a very, very simple story, a very Iranian story, as they call it. But it has multiple layers, and different characters represent many, many different things. As I mentioned, only a name is mentioned, and You should know that thing to realize what it is referring to. At the heart of the story is the character's encounter with the past, a past aborted by forgetting and fabrication. In a situation where it seems that larger public hedonistically seeks to forget the troubles of the present, in entertainment and laughter, Shahlaei and artists like him bring the specter of this past to the stage, telling us not to forget, telling us to look back, but not in anger or nostalgia, but to look back in order to, in Walter Benjamin's words, give a chance, a revolutionary chance, in the fight for the oppressed past. Thank you. Please.
The government doesn't tolerate the plays. It sounded like they don't tolerate the plays that are critical of the government.
So, not that they don't. Even if they don't, how can you control 140 plays?
Well,
that change every night, change every day. And again, the ones that I showed you with large-scale production, these are government officials making these plays. So there is not a norm that we can say, oh, government does not accept criticism. We don't know what the government does.
So they don't punish.
They punish some, they don't punish others. Again, it's not a written rule. And again, as an artist, you should be wiser than it's very easy to criticize someone openly. So they are finding other ways to go around these things. So. Yes.
First of all, thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much for that presentation. It's wonderful to see how many things are happening in the theater scene, and I think it's a very, very understudied subject in contemporary Iranian art and culture. I wonder how much you agree with these artists calling themselves alternative, in the sense that theater has certainly a meaning for that term. When we're talking about alternative theater, we are certainly talking about a kind of theater that is not very much like the ones that you have described here, right? And I think coming from the field of plastic arts in contemporary, this is where a lot of the performance artists found refuge in the gallery. I think this is just breaking up and down, so I'll speak a little louder. They found refuge in galleries and in art museums precisely because the theater scene was not accepting of, like Grotowski's style or people who were following Auguste Boal for the theater of the oppressed, those sort of movements that wanted to leave the black box of the theater or wanted to do something quite radical, like an anti-theater form. So those were the ones that I've seen that they are growing a little bit, and there's more of an acceptance of them in the theater spaces. But with the privatization of theater, one of the things that also came about with the privatization of theater in Iran, as much as with the plastic arts, with huge auctions and everything, is that the theater scene actually became more and more, or at least to my knowledge, maybe you know it very, the scene very much better than I do, but maybe you know also what has been recently the case, but has become more and more conservative. So all of those movements were pushed into houses. Basically, like people opened their apartments for alternative practices. So I wonder how much you agree with these being alternative. These seem to follow a very kind of conventional style of theater in a European and American style that has been practiced.
So I asked him, because exactly, my understanding of alternative theater goes back to the British playwrights, the anti-Thatcherite, who call themselves alternative against Thatcher, who said there is no alternative, Tina, and they were saying, no, we're giving you thousands of alternatives. And his answer was very, very interesting. He said that what I see in theater scene in Iran is some type of pseudo-intellectualism. That these people do not understand the original play, say Brecht or Beckett or all the others, and they just stage them just to say we are intellectuals. And it is fine, we love it if you don't understand what is happening. And these are calling themselves all alternative plays. He says what I want to do is that all types of audience understand what is happening without doing what others are doing, which is cheap shots at the government against that type of consumerism, that this is how we have the audience and how a play sells, but also against the type of pseudo-intellectualism that he sees in the plays. Personally, yes, I don't believe that these are alternative in the sense that I see them, but in his understanding of alternative, it is. And based on what has been happening in the scene, I wouldn't call them alternative, but definitely different. They're a different type of play. Besides all those Iranianization of European and American plays, but also very much different from the older generations of playwrights. For example, Radi is still a very, very popular playwright. Many adapt his works. But I feel he is trying consciously, and it is the beginning. He can work much more on what is happening, on what he's doing to make some changes. And another thing is his attempt in reviving the theater outside of Tehran. So producing plays, writing plays for those groups who don't have access neither to government subsidies nor to the private sector. So he has to think about the kind of stories he can tell that can be produced for a larger audience. And I think that's what he means by alternative, to drawing more audience.
Kind of an ethical interpretation of the term.
Absolutely. Absolutely ethical. Absolutely. Yes. And to continue on that, these were the plays that were permitted to show. Many, many are being performed underground in people's houses, and that's another story. There are so many of them happening right now. I was invited to so many of them, I didn't know what to do. So that's another thing we should maybe talk about sometimes when I go back to Iran and see some of them, because, yes. Please. And please ask me questions. Ask me about other things. Again.
So it seems to me that you agree with me that the center of gravity of most of these works are kind of a Euro-American style of theater. And we do have, I mean, especially Stanford, Beizai is the host of Bahram Beizai, this, the master of Iranian theater and playwright, and an amazing scholar also. And he has done a lot of work in order to revive not necessarily only a formal tradition of theater writing, but also in Karname Bondar Bidakhsh, like in Margi Yazgar Sevom, like in Margi Yazgar, right? Yeah, so Margi Yazgar. So in those plays, he has tried to revive a kind of a I know that the term authentic in the U.S. academia has a very, is frowned upon, but in a sense it is sort of authentic in that it's not necessarily getting its authority from the Western style of writing. Mm-hmm. Do you see any of those movements in order to revive that sort of very, very rich literary and also dramatic? I mean, with the Ta'ziyeh and all of that dramatic traditions in the past, do you see any kind of attempt to reinterpret those traditions? I'm saying this in a sense that I'm not saying just let's revive them in a nostalgic way. What I mean by it is, in Gadamer's sense that we need to translate tradition to our own time. Are there any such as what Beizai has been doing for his almost entire professional life. Do you see any kind of those movements that are trying to translate that
So,
tradition?
not at the moment. And the things that are being done, actually, the reinterpretation of Beizai's work. So if the reinterpretation is happening, it is of his work. And I haven't come across people who are doing the research from scratch. I don't know if the reason is the weight that Mr. Beizai has and all the other elements that come with that weight, or is it just the commercialization that the private sector is not very much interested in that? But when we come to government, yes, every year there are festivals of native and ethnic rituals, ethnic plays. So during the Muharram, there are so many reinterpretations of Taziyeh, and this past Muharram there was a marionette by, what's his name? He does most of these marionette types of things. He did Rumi, he did
Behruz
Gharib, right, yeah. So, but from these younger generations, and that might be because of the way that the theater is being taught at the universities. That's one of the things I would love to work on more. What are they teaching right now? So does that have an effect on things? Or I don't want to say that everybody is just going for making money, but I've met directors who started as these originalist type of things, and they couldn't make a living, so now they are just producing comedies or. Yes?
You mentioned privatization, and then thank you very much for. I liked it very much, and you presented it so well. Thank you.
Thank you.
You mentioned privatization and also government subsidies. So I was wondering about the institutional framework here, from the actors. How are they making a living? Is this under an institutional framework, to the spaces, to the theater spaces, and so how much of privatization and how much of subsidy, and how do you relate that to the production of this? I will take his word, alternative. Theaters. Yeah, thank you.
So his plays have been produced by government subsidies, and the other director that works with him, Mohammad Al-Arti, himself is the head of this gentleman, Mohammad Al-Arti. He is the head of the Shahid organization for martyrs. He is in charge of their theater, yes, but it's in. So it is a mixture of the two. So most of the actors are paid by the ministry. Some of them are employees of the Office of Dramatic Arts. Most of them work pro bono. They say it's the love, they call it. So we love the dust of the scene. Do you have a better translation for it? They say we want to be on stage and we live for this. We don't care that we're not being paid at all. When I talk to Mr. Shahlaei himself, he says it's not for the profit. We're not making money. He's not against privatization, and interestingly enough, he said, I think it's a great thing that people are paying that much money to go and watch Oliver Twist or watch Les Miserables, because he says maybe it's a start for many people. First, they just go there to have a selfie on Instagram, and they become interested in it and continue going to different things. That's another thing. If it becomes a trend, it's a good thing, even if it is for the wrong reasons. But my understanding is that it is not even for the wrong reasons. And there are private producers who are going for the more non-profit view of theater. But for example, when they invite a superstar and he asks for 200 million tomans for to be in that play has to sell more than 1 billion tomans so that it is profitable for the producer. Another thing, and we're being recorded, the rumors is some of these might be money laundering schemes. I don't know, but that's a very, very strong rumor. That, for example, a few years ago, building malls became very popular in Iran, interestingly enough, right when we were on the harshest sanctions. But the good thing about those malls was that at least a fourth of its space had to go to cultural events.
Oh yeah, we heard that before here.
Yes, okay.
At that very podium.
Yes, okay.
If I may interrupt, I wasn't really going for what it means for profit making or that, but I was really thinking about the cultural policy. Because if the government is paying for this, then there is a cultural policy. And how is that what alternative theater means, that it's not going to go under the umbrella of a cultural policy?
But cultural policy...
Is there a directorate, for example, where is the government subsidy coming from? Is there a special...
It's a Ministry of Education and Guidance and Culture. So the Farhang و Irshad و Islah.
Oh, okay,
yes.
okay.
So it's different from policymaker to policymaker. It changes from government to government. This Mr. Parsai, who is producing these things, he was one of the people who stopped many plays himself because he considered them to be against the values of the government. But he himself is producing this thing. So what he means, what is meant by the policy, by the cultural policy, it's very difficult to decide what it is. And my point here is that whatever that policy is, people are living their lives. People are making different types of plays, and different people go and watch them. So that's the main point I want to make, that whatever those policies are, which we do not know what they are, we know the general things, but how much actually they are followed or not, we don't know. Sometimes even changing one word would make a play a very moral, ethical, Islamic thing. Other times, more things than a word has to change.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk.
My pleasure.
I know that a few people have written about how with Iranian alternative cinema, there's been influence between other Southern cinemas, like, for example, Bengali cinema or Japanese cinema. Do you find the same kind of Southern interaction or influence in the theater movement?
That's a very good question, and I really don't know the answer to that. It definitely needs more research, but Mr. Beizai, who started that type of different theater, he was very much influenced by the Japanese tradition, and he does that at Stanford too, in that he performs 10-hour plays, which is very much a continuation of kabuki, and he really loves imitating those type of plays. But that's a very good question. I know that there are, at least among the writers, there is an attempt of looking to the East for inspiration, for cultural dialogue, so on and so forth. But I definitely need to look more into that. Thank you for the question. Yeah. Yes.
So, I'm wondering if you can say a bit more about what is it about plays that I mean, even speculatively, because to watch a play is a very different type of intimacy than to watch a movie or watch a television. And so the visual space, of course, is filled with all kinds of things from phone screens. And so would it be too far to go to say that this is the cultivation of different sociality?
So that was exactly why I was so interested, because in Iran, you can, all the books, all the movies are miraculously translated and shown before the Europe and America. I watched much more movies and read much more books when I was in Iran. They were free and very cheap. So there's no copyright in Iran, so that happens. So that was my question, because the culture of seeing movies has changed as well. For example, I remember when I was a kid, we called him Filmi, a movie person. And he would come, he was wearing this huge raincoat, and we had to open the door for him at specific times. He would come in, very, very careful, and then from the depth of this raincoat, he would produce some, I remember the Betamax versions, and then it was VHS, and then, and it was a very dangerous thing, so he came every week, and a week that we missed him, we knew, oh, he was arrested. God damn it, we should find another one. We weren't worried about him, but we were worried about, we have to find another movie person. But now you just download it. I cannot tell you how many websites are there from which you can download the latest movies and plays and series for free. And that was my thing, when you have this thing and you say that the government harasses you if you go out. So you can watch inside your home and watch all these things with greatest quality without getting stuck in traffic, without having to find parking, without having to pay. What is happening? And I think it is, the theory that I have is absolutely that. It is another type of being in public. It is the fact that they're building all these malls and the shops are empty, but the restaurants are always filled with people. So I think it has changed. And because in Iran, there is still some form of value attached to cultural capital. You have to prove that you're a cultured person. And what better way to do it by supporting the arts? So, and it is not just theater, it's cinema, museums, galleries. They're filled with people. The number of galleries, that you should know more. And again, these are just the public ones. The private ones are the whole other story. So is it the new generations? It is just a hedonistic way of forgetting what is happening, or more simply, there are 80 million people in Iran, and they're enjoying life as people everywhere. So because we have more people are out there, more plays are playing, more movies are playing. So, but I personally, I think that is one of the things that it gives you a space to socialize with your friends, with your family, and you're doing something sanctioned by everyone, by your parents, by your family, by the government, whoever who is the authority figure. So, but that is exactly one of my questions, of what is happening and why so sudden. It started from 2015, so.
A little bit of a difference, I think, between the theater and the plastic arts scene and cinema. That's why the government has such a tighter grip on the cinema, because of the audience that it actually attracts. Whereas theater still is very elite,
True.
I mean, people can afford to buy tickets at
Right, right.
180,000. I mean, this is outrageous.
This is outrageous. Yes, yes.
It used to be like 10,000, 15, like 40,000 maybe like 5 years ago.
I remember 700 Tumans when
But
I'm
it's
that
still-
old.
It has always been like maybe triple or 4 times or fivefold the price of what you can go to a theater. And
true.
the theaters are all around the city and all around the country, whereas like cinema theaters, whereas like where you have plays are predominantly concentrated in Tehran.
Yes, and
also
the city
parts
center,
of
yes.
Tehran, city center, and also north, right?
Right.
So I think that the government at some point came to this understanding, at least with the plastic arts that it did, that there is only like maybe a few thousand of you. So it's not even worth like looking into what you're doing. So
Right.
we just let you do whatever you're doing because it's not going to amount to anything. So if theater starts growing at this rate, then they start ripping it, I guess, tighter and tighter.
But that's the question. Can they compare cinema today with 10 years ago?
True, yeah. I mean,
All
first
the
of
red
social
lines.
movement
Yes,
cannot be stopped.
exactly. All the red lines have changed. When I'm watching Iranian movies, oh my God, why didn't anyone censor this? What's happening here? I'm corrupted. I'm ruined forever for watching this thing. So it's, and that's another thing about the people who are living in that country. It's not just the government who has this grip on everyone. People have a far more tighter grip on the government.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then we can just thank Ahoo for a wonderful talk.
Thank you so much.